We've got Jeff on the line from Tampa who evidently has issues with you and I and something we said. So it's a good thing we're both here today.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi. How's it going?
Okay.
Good.
Okay. So, yeah, I was listening to your show, at the end of February, and I thought there was some kind of equivocation or confusion with the use of the word possible. So if you don't mind, I'll start with a question, right?
Okay.
Sure.
So true or false, if X is not known to be impossible, then for all I know, X is possible.
I don't understand the addition of for all I know, because what you know is irrelevant to whether or not X is possible.
All right, so I'm glad that you caught that. I'm glad that you caught that, because the phrase "for all I know, X is possible" is important in philosophy. It's called epistemically possible.
Yes.
So, in fact, X is not known to be impossible is logically equivalent to "for all I know, X is possible."
It would be logically possible. Epistemic possibility would need to be demonstrated.
Well, let me just say it again. It's just a logical tautology. This is just propositional logic. This doesn't have anything to do with, atheism or theism.
I understand that, but to say...
Okay, X is...
Okay.
I'm just saying if I say X is not known to be impossible, that there's a logical proof. It's only 3 steps. You can just show that's just logically equivalent to for all I know, X is possible.
Okay.
That's my only
my only concern is whether or not X is possible. I don't care about for all you know.
Okay, that's cool. So yeah, let's go on to that. So let's try this question. So true or false? If X is not known to be impossible, then that does not imply that X is possible.
True.
All right. So I have to preface my answer by saying that this may sound like a joke, but it's a serious philosophical point. So do you know that that's true?
Well, it depends on what we're going to define as know, but yes, I know that to be true based on my usage of the word knowledge.
Okay.
But I would also say whether or not I know it to be true is irrelevant. I believe it to be true and have good reasons for it. Whether or not that counts as knowledge is immaterial.
All right. Well, what you've stumbled upon is called the knowability paradox, and in fact, that proposition that I just read, if X is not known to be impossible, then that does not imply that X is possible. That's provably not knowable. And I
didn't say it was knowable, which is why I objected as soon as you tried to insert a knowledge claim there. What I said was I believe that to be the case, and for good reason. The mere fact that something has not been demonstrated to be impossible does not mean that it is possible.
Right. I completely understand where you're coming from.
That's all we were saying.
There's a set of impossible things, and a subset of that is the things that are known to be impossible, right?
Right.
Yes.
You're saying if you're not in that subset, you could be in the immediately containing set, right? And you could be something could be impossible, but you might not know.
But you're not aware of it.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So let P equal X equals let P equal X is impossible. All right. So
I need a whiteboard.
Do you want to use my iPad?
Go ahead. I just...
All right. So P equals X is impossible. All right.
Okay.
So what you're doing is that you're asserting the truth of the following statement. You're saying P, but P is not known. That's called the knowability paradox, and it's proved that that is not knowable. So
not knowable? Not knowable or not known? What isn't knowable? And how did we determine that it's not knowable?
Can I just ask something? And you're going to have to forgive me because I'm not up on philosophy. But if I were to say to somebody that if I don't know that what someone just said is a lie, does that make what they just said true?
No.
Okay, that's kind of how I'm looking at possible and impossible. I don't know that they've lied or told the truth. I have no idea which is correct. And yet the fact that I don't know that it's a lie does not mean that it isn't a lie. Right?
Right.
Okay.
But I also have a problem with this issue of shifting from what is known to what is knowable. For example, I could say I've got a $100 bill in my wallet, and you don't know, but you also don't know whether or not it's knowable.
Okay, but actually, sometimes you can prove that something is not knowable. You can start with the statement that you know it, and if you derive the statement that you don't know it, then it's unknowable. And that's what happens when you have.
Okay. So I don't disagree with you that it may be possible to demonstrate that something is unknowable, but what you just said doesn't fit that, because you're still dealing basically, and also I want to make clear that in this sort of conversation, there's an equivocation between known with the definition of is aware of, and known in the epistemological sense of what counts as knowledge. So I don't want to sit here and worry about equivocations over whether we're talking about aware of or familiar with, et cetera. So let me just ask this. We both agree that the mere fact that something isn't impossible or isn't known to be impossible doesn't tell you whether or not it's possible, right?
Right.
Okay. So what's the issue? I don't know what the issue is.
The issue is that whole phrase that you just agreed to is proven to be unknowable. You have a phrase that says P, but P is not known.
But I guess the problem is we agree on the foundation of what was said 2 weeks ago, which is if we don't know if something is possible or impossible, then it doesn't really make sense to declare it to be possible, because we don't know if it's possible or impossible, right? I mean, don't we all agree on at least that?
Maybe I think I can explain the problem by use of an example.
That'd be much better than P's and X's.
Okay.
Right. All right, so let's take this ridiculous thing called last Thursdayism. Now, there's a religious version of this, but we just want the philosophical claim.
It's the 5-minute universe.
Right. So, the universe was created last Thursday. We've been implanted with these false memories. Light was created to make it appear that it came from distant stars, and it was appropriately redshifted and all that. And part of this claim is that there's no test that we can make to demonstrate that last Thursdayism is, false.
It's an unfalsifiable proposition.
Right.
So,
and by the way, it would seem to be untestable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's a kind of an example that's created to sort of dance along the epistemological boundaries, So, so here's the question: would you say that last Thursdayism is impossible?
No.
Right. So that's just because we can't demonstrate it to be impossible.
Correct.
So,
but I also wouldn't say...
I also wouldn't say it's possible.
Right.
I have no way of assessing whether or not last Thursdayism is possible or impossible. And that's a separate issue from the fact that I also don't seem to have any way of determining whether or not last Thursdayism is actually true.
And can I ask a question? And this might be, forgive me if this is a dumb question. Again, I'm not up on philosophy. But what if somebody were to say, just because I can't prove something is possible doesn't mean that it's impossible? For all I know, it may be impossible. Just because I can't prove it's possible.
For all I know.
Right, no, but I'm just kind of putting it, could you not take the thing that you said at the outset and turn it around and put possible where impossible is and make the same claim?
Yeah.
Would there be a reason you couldn't? Like what you said at first, and you could feel free to correct me if I misstate this because it was, a little confusing for me, but it sounded like what you said was something like, just because I don't know something is impossible, or if it was impossible, then for all I know, it's possible. Like if it's not if I don't know if it is impossible, then for all I know, it's possible. Was that kind of what you said?
Right.
Okay.
And that's like, we're forced to accept that because that's the logical.
So then also, if I don't know that it's possible, then for all I know, it's impossible, right?
I'd have to work that out.
I mean,
Why?
it should be the same.
So you've got two things, direct logical negations. It works both ways. Both an assertion of possibility and an assertion of impossibility carry with them a need to demonstrate that this is in fact the case. And absent that, you are not warranted to accept either proposition. The only exception that I can think of, which isn't even an exception, it's just a pragmatic tool, is the null hypothesis, that we begin with a presumption that there's no connection between A and B until such time as a connection is demonstrated. It's not a statement of this is the truth that there's no connection. It's a statement of this is the default position, because otherwise you'd be put in a position of accepting many contradictory things and you'd live in cognitive dissonance forever.
I completely. In a way, we're sort of on the same page. Like I said before, I understand. I explained the diagram where if you're not in the realm of known impossible, you could just be impossible, but not known to be impossible.
Yeah, which is why I explained that I'm not overly concerned with what somebody knows. If they claim to know it, I want to know why. And why anybody else should be convinced of this. And what I actually care about are beliefs and whether or not they are rational and consistent with our best understanding of reality.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I guess to me it seems like when I said the equivocation at the beginning, it's most of the time the problem I had in general, like basically I don't have a problem with really what you said, except that when most people say possible in just sort of everyday conversation, they're usually referring to epistemically possible. Like, for all I know, it's possible.
Sure.
And you're using
for all I
know, it's impossible. Hang on.
I will have to look up. I will have to look this up and correct it, because I think what you described is not epistemic possibility. I think that what you're describing is essentially a logical possibility. This is something I went over with Blake Junta over and over and over and over again, because epistemic possibility gets to the actual fact of whether it's possible, whereas within the realm of logical reasoning, if you can't show that it's impossible, this is where we get the anything's possible sort of thing. So when they say,
well, right,
when you say,
okay, so that sort of nails down what the point I was trying to make. So last Thursdayism is this sort of case designed to show how low a bar epistemically possible is. It's just the lowest bar.
Okay, I still think you're using epistemically possible in place of logically, but we'll have to solve that at another time. Are we in agreement on the facts of the matter, or is there something else that you disagreed with?
Well, I guess to me it seems like you just said about consistency and inconsistency. I mean, it seems to me that you didn't really grok the point about the unknowable. So if you look up the knowability paradox, then you'll sort of see what I'm trying to say.
Well,
what you actually did was assert the truth of a statement that's proven to be unknowable, and I thought that was unusual.
Okay.
So I just think that's a bad way to do it.
I thought what we said was that we couldn't know if it was possible or impossible.
That's a separate issue.
Okay.
What I said was true. And I pointed out, I am convinced that this is in fact the case for good reason. Now, my objection was when you went from, when I think your description of the knowable paradox and your usage of epistemically possible are incorrect, or at least they don't mesh with my understanding, so I'll have to look it up and think about it some more. But at the end of the day, though, setting aside all of that, the knowability paradox, all this other stuff, my position is that something should not be viewed as possible merely because its impossibility hasn't been demonstrated. Are we in agreement?
Right.
Okay, that's it. That's all we cared about. Because there were people. Hang on. Because there were people who were asserting that because we haven't shown God to be impossible, therefore God is possible, and that is fallacious. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
So you mind if I try another example just to try to get across my point?
I guess. There's like 5 more lines, and I see people, like when you scratch their eyeballs out from P's and X's and knowns and possibilities that have nothing to do with tell us what you believe and why. All
right. So let's take the the example of fundamental particles that like new fundamental particles.
Let's not. Let's not.
All right. Well, those are epistemically possible, and it just seems silly to say to a physicist, "Well, wait a second. Some new fundamental particle. It could be impossible, but we don't know it's impossible." It's just kind of a weird thing.
Why would that be
we've
weird?
Just proven that.
Like, why wouldn't that be correct?
It's of no help. Yeah.
I mean, I would think that a physicist would have to acknowledge that if it hasn't been demonstrated as possible, they could go in and investigate and find out that this thing can't be. I mean, couldn't they?
Well, the
John
point
Carroll
is that
talks about known unknowns and unknown unknowns.
I don't know.
Anyway, what the hell does any of this have to do with the atheist
to me.
experience and people's beliefs in gods? Because Lawrence Krauss isn't here. I'll be with him in a couple of weeks. If you put together an email about particle physics, if I find it interesting, I might ask Lawrence about it. But I don't see what the relevance is. And I don't, if we came to agreement that you're not justified in accepting that something is possible merely because it hasn't been shown to be impossible, then we're in agreement. So why are we continuing on with yet another example?
Because what I'm saying is that, in fact, when people are talking about possible, they're really talking about epistemically possible. Like, it would be silly to say to a physicist, well, wait a second, the magnetic monopole is like that's my favorite theoretical particle. The magnetic monopole, well, wait a second, that could be impossible, but you don't know it's impossible. I mean, it's of no use to people. Like, we don't have the omniscient view to know, in fact, what is or is not impossible. We work with what we know, and that's why people work with epistemically possible.
It just
Correct,
seems
because
weird,
epistemic possibility is based on our knowledge of what we can demonstrate.
But what if you had something like epistemology that was like epistemically true, where if I couldn't demonstrate it was a lie, I called it true? I mean, that would be such a mess. Why would people want to think that way?
Well, I don't really. I'm sorry, I don't really follow that, but that would probably be epistemically necessary, is what you're talking about.
I don't think it is necessary, though.
So we've long lost any interest from me, which means we've lost 95% of the audience.
All right.
So do you believe there's a God? Do you believe there's a God? Oh, running away, eh?
I thought it was caller 2. Oh, I guess not. I don't know who.